Hola gente, mi nombre es Chloe y en este video les voy a hablar sobre La Llorona. Unfortunately, this video will not be entirely filmed in Spanish. I just don't have the skills for that. But I will use Spanish off and on as it is relevant in this video. So today we'll be discussing who La Llorona is, why her story is told, and how she's been portrayed in film, both in the US and in Mexico. With that being said, let's get started. La Leyenda de la Llorona is a Mexican ghost story in which a woman finds out that her lover has been unfaithful, and thus, in a fit of rage, she ends up murdering her children. There are two common ways in which these murders are told. She either stabs them with a dagger, or, as is more commonly known, she drowns them in a river. As a result of her grief, she also ends up dying. There are also two common ways in which the story is told regarding her death. She is either hung by the townsfolk when they realize what she has done, or after she realizes what she has done, she drowns herself in the river as well while she cries out, Mis hijos, mis hijos. Uh, Man, this story is really dark, and I threw this in like a minute into the video. I am so sorry about that. There are a lot of different stories regarding her spirit after death, but she is commonly portrayed as this vengeful spirit who's searching for her children. She's said to normally appear near bodies of water. She usually has a funeral veil covering her face and is crying. It's said that if she finds children alone near the water, she will kidnap them and harm them in some way. Her story has been told by Mexican parents to their children for centuries. It's used as a way to deter them from staying out late, from wandering off alone, or from getting too close to dangerous bodies of water. I would equate La Llorona as like a Mexican boogeyman, in that she's used to scare children into doing what their parents want. It's for their safety, of course. Do you think there's something to be said about the early childhood development effects of using this fear tactic? However, it's not a conversation piece for this video. It shouldn't come as a surprise that La Llorona has been subject to quite a few horror adaptations, some of which being good and some of them being pretty bad. Unfortunately, a lot of American adaptations, even the high budget Hollywood films, just kind of end up flopping. I think this is because most American filmmakers didn't grow up hearing the story to really understand what makes her so scary to a Mexican audience, and thus ends up treating La Llorona kind of the same as any other ghost.
Voy a quedar contigo para siempre.
Because I wanted to see how her portrayal differs between the US and Mexican filmmakers, I ended up watching two Mexican films, 1960's La Llorona and 1961's La Maldición de la Llorona. They were so very different from each other, and obviously from the American adaptations of her, but I really enjoyed both of them for honestly very different reasons. Um, Due to the time constraints I have for this video, I'll only be discussing 1960s La Llorona, but I do highly recommend La Maldición de la Llorona, especially if you enjoy those kind of hokey 1960s and 50s monster movies, because this one pulls inspiration from a lot of different things, including like vampires, witches, possession, and whatnot. Um, Honestly, La Llorona is kind of just a means to an end in this film, but it is a wild and very fun ride to go on. If you can't understand Spanish, I actually recommend purchasing the DVD with English subtitles, because the English dub online is so offensively bad that I couldn't finish it. You can find this for like $7 on Amazon, and I feel like it's worth it. 1960s La Llorona was directed by Rene and tells the story of a family's ancestral curse placed on by La Llorona. What I found most interesting about this film is that it told the backstory of La Llorona, or as she's named in the film, Luisa del Carmen. Her story is told by the patriarch of the family, Don Gerardo Montes, to his son-in-law Felipe. Luisa is a lower class, half Spanish, half indigenous woman who was swept away and fell in love with an upper class Spanish conquistador, Don Nuno de Montesclaros. They end up having two children together, and unfortunately, very quickly into this film, you can tell that Don Nuno is kind of checked out. He's not very interested in the children and has also lost interest in Luisa. He's often absent and tells her that he's going out on these missions. And eventually, one evening, Luisa follows a fellow conquistador, Don Nuno's, and finds him at this like party at like this palace, and finds him flirting with another woman. He ends up pulling her aside and kind of breaks it to her that he had no plans to marry her, and it actually plans to marry this other woman, specifically because Luisa is not pure Spanish. And this is when she places the curse on Don Nuno, which is that the firstborn of all of his descendants will be violently murdered. The next scene was very impactful to me because she runs out into the village square, and this is where you kind of see her starting to descend into madness. You see these indigenous people circling around her, and they start dancing, and it is clear that this is a symbol of her having an identity crisis and this hatred of her heritage, because she will always be considered a second class citizen because of it. You know, Maria Elena Marquez, the actress who plays Luisa, truly did this amazing job at like giving these facial expressions when portraying Luisa and like her fear, her anger, her pain of her situation. It truly just a fantastic role for her. After this scene, she runs back home, and this is the unfortunate scene of her killing her children, where she uses a dagger, and the final scene is of her being hung and ridiculed by the entire town as she wails. We now return to the present day of the film, and Don Gerardo explains that they are the descendants of Don Nuno, that his son was violently murdered at the age of 4, and that this is why Margarita, Don Gerardo's daughter and Felipe's wife, is terrified about leaving their son Jorgito alone. Felipe does convince Margarita to go out and spend time together and actually hires a nanny to take care of Jorgito. Soon arrives their nanny, Carmen Asiol, this nanny, of course, being Luisa, who has come back from the dead once again to kill Jorgito. I need to humble myself here for a minute when I say that it took until the end of the film, the same time Don Gerardo realized that Asiol was Luisa backwards. Uh, I've never claimed to be the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree, but oh my god, I was so embarrassed that it took so long for the light bulb to turn on there. Luisa has several failed attempts at killing Jorgito, and she only has 24 hours in her corporeal body to do so. But her final attempt is when Felipe and Margarita leave for a night on the town. This leaves Luisa, Jorgito, and Gerardo alone in the house. Luisa ends up stealing the dagger that is hanging over Gerardo's desk, which is the same dagger, coincidentally, that she had used to kill her children in the flashback scenes. Gerardo realizes who she is and runs up to Jorgito's room to stop her, but she's unfortunately locked the door. She has this monologue about how she must get her revenge, but something stops her. I couldn't really figure out what. Again, not the brightest bulb on the Christmas tree here, but she runs out of time and disappears before she can kill him. Because she has failed her final attempt, this curse is officially broken and the family is forever safe. And yes, we have this happy ending. I really enjoyed this film and how it stayed pretty close to the source material whilst also adding this interesting spin and that she's targeting a specific family. I especially appreciated how it felt like the story was told as if a parent was sharing a ghost story with their child. Yes, Felipe is a grown man, but he hadn't heard the story before, and Don Gerardo used it as this like cautionary tale to keep Jorgito safe. Once again, I want to sing my praises to Maria Elena Marquez. She was just a wonderful actress who really embodied her role as Luisa to the point that I could feel her emotions through the screen. Yeah, I highly recommend this film to anyone who's interested in the backstory of La Llorona. The film is available on YouTube with English subtitles. If you do watch it, please let me know how you felt about it in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.